I ultimately made my tyrannical boss pay me over $30,000 as a punishment. And it all started with a public humiliation over a plate of hot wings. For years, I endured his abuse. But that was the last straw. This is the story of how I planned and executed a painful revenge that made him pay every single penny of what he owed me. I worked for a small IT consulting firm for 7 years. A business owned and operated by a person we'll call Arthur. For the first 2 years, things were fine. Sure, Arthur would occasionally take things a little too far. But he was just passionate about his opinion and always had to be right. So I'd give him that. I didn't have to agree. I just saw his need for validation and left it alone. What I slowly started to discover, however, is that the employee turnover at the company was consistently just a couple of years. And I began to understand why. The boss, Arthur, picks one worker and makes it his life's work to make that person as miserable as possible. For ego purposes? I guess. For months, I'd hear him shouting at this one guy, Mark. After every meeting, Mark would return to his office. And from my desk, I could just see the stress and misery etched on his face. Finally, I asked him, "What the hell, man? He's always giving you a hard time. What did you do?" He didn't even seem to know. He confided in me right there about the level of hell he was in, sharing some of the things Arthur had said and done. I honestly couldn't believe the details. I felt he must be embellishing because people just don't do some of the things he described. Much later, I would realize he was telling the absolute truth. As crazy as it sounded. A few months later, he found another job and left. I still talk to him a couple of times a year. And he always says leaving was the best choice he ever made. As one person online astutely pointed out after hearing stories like this, some bosses seem to operate by picking a villain in their inner circle, inventing failures, and after some torture, dismissing the person. Since Arthur is reasonable to everyone else, they assume it's the villain's fault. Until it's their turn. And with Mark gone, Arthur's sights then narrowed directly onto me. I can take a lot. So for the next 5 years, I took it. He would insult me pretty much every day. Each day's insults more colorful than the last. It didn't really bother me or follow me home. So it wasn't a problem for me. For Arthur, however, I would soon learn it was. 5 years in, he asked me to get a couple of certifications, promising he would take care of me if I did. I not only obtained the 2 he requested but an additional 14 on top of that. Each time I earned one, he'd say, "Great job. You will be well taken care of." But once I had them all, he backed out of the agreement and played coy. He lied 16 times. I put in my notice. Within a minute, he was on the phone, begging me to stay. He matched the other offer and increased my salary by another $15,000. I decided to stay. He accepted the money and stayed. Not yet realizing he was making a classic mistake. Arthur hadn't been changed. He had only been placated. And I was about to learn the hard way that you can't put a price on your own peace. What I learned is I was a fool to do that. And money isn't everything. Go where you'll be the most happy, that's the best life advice I can give. He left me alone for a couple of months. But then a day struck his fancy to start things up again. The problem for him was that my work was solid, giving him no opportunity to criticize it. His only method was bashing his ego around with sarcasm. But he soon realized it had no impact on me. I learned fast, never speak unless spoken to. Any comment or insult he made, I would respond without emotion and just say, okay. Since he couldn't get a rise out of me, he decided to create fictional content. On Fridays, our small company would go out to eat. One day, I ate half my sandwich and wrapped the other half to take home. He saw this and loudly claimed I was taking home dinner on his dime. From then on, anytime there was any leftover food, he'd be there with a magnifying glass, searching for any conceivable reason to yell. So, I started packing my own lunch. I'd order a beverage and a side, finish them completely, and then eat what I brought. You could see the look of pure disappointment on his face as he scanned my empty plate. He had failed again. So he moved on to his next obsession, the bathroom. This was truly bizarre. Anytime anyone would use the restroom, he would blame me for the smell. Instead of hello when passing in the hall, he would hiss, "Did you use spray?" Or, "Did you light a match?" I honestly believe Arthur has a fetish on this topic. It was always on his mind and far too important to him. I must have visually tipped him off that I didn't approve, because he never got bored with it. I did, however, get him to stop asking about the spray. Anytime I used the bathroom, even just to piss, I would empty an entire can of air freshener. This wasn't easy. I'd have to cover my face to endure the aerosol cloud. As someone later commented, it might seem petty, but it was a hilarious, small act of defiance. After about 5 weeks of him constantly buying new cans, he figured it out. He stuck to just asking about matches after that and even started providing them in the bathroom. Then came the day that changed everything. We were out to lunch with a client. The topic of conversation was favorite foods. My answer was hot wings. I could eat those every day. Arthur jumps in, looks at me, and says with a smirk, "Just think how bad the bathroom would smell." He said this in front of a client, in public, while people were eating. This single, vindictive comment in front of a client revealed Arthur's greatest fatal flaw. His ego was so immense that it eclipsed his business sense. He simply couldn't resist the urge to debase someone, even when it put his own reputation on the line. And at that moment, he had no idea he'd just signed his own bill for over $30. 000. I almost walked out. But I remembered he drove. I had to chant in my mind, "He's over 60. What kind of person knocks out a senior?" to keep myself in my seat. After years of this, that was the last straw. I finished the day without reacting, but I swore I would get even in a lawful way. That night, the idea came to me. I did my research. I was just going to mirror him until he fired me. I read up on all the unemployment rules in my state. To qualify, it can't be your fault if you were fired. If I was laid off, however, I would qualify. And when he fired me, he would have to pay half my current salary of $65,000 until I found a new job. I could live perfectly fine on $32. $5K for 6 months. My goal was now set: make him pay me $32. $500 as restitution. By refusing to sink to Arthur's level with direct insults and instead choosing to beat him with process and logic, I was crafting a perfect trap. I was counting on Arthur's massive ego to be the very thing that would make him pull the trigger on his own downfall. I hit him where it hurt first, his meetings. He loves to hear himself talk, congratulating himself on his own genius. So I started speaking up, illustrating more efficient, cost-effective ways to do things. He would argue, sometimes red in the face, especially when others liked my ideas. He knew he was wrong but would demand it be done his way. Then I started talking about him within earshot. I'd say things like, "Make sure you do that Arthur's way. It takes longer. But it's better than him releasing the Kraken." It always got a laugh. But it wasn't a direct insult. I laid it on thick. And I knew it was working. His retaliation was to accuse me of things, then play coy when I asked for details. I just went along with whatever he said, which only made him madder because his game had no effect on me. Fast forward 6 months. Business was slow due to Arthur's bad decisions. And we were only getting a couple of calls a day. I was hoping for a layoff. But nothing. I had to make him want to fire me. The opportunity arrived when the second-in-command, Sam, asked me to travel to a client. I said, "I'm sorry, Sam. I haven't received reimbursement in 6 months for travel. And my work cell was just turned off. I'm owed over $2,000. Once that's paid in full, I'd be happy to continue on a week-to-week basis." That day, Arthur set up a 3-week payment plan. I told him, "Understood. So after 3 weeks I'll be on the road again." For the next 2 weeks, he had to pay Sam, his second-in-command, to be my personal taxi driver, driving me to the few calls we had. He was paying 2 people, me to work, and Sam to drive me and watch. Sam knew exactly what I was doing and loved every second of it. On the 3rd week, 3 days before the final payment, it happened. Arthur entered my office and gave me that demeaning little dog-wave gesture to follow him. We sat down and he asked me what the problem was. The problem, I told him, is you need a new hobby. In one hand, you have someone who has busted his ass for 7 years. In the other, you have your need to bash someone's face into the dirt with your ego. The problem with me is I won't conform and provide both. He asked for examples. I just laughed and said he'd only play coy if I gave them. He then played coy about being coy. He tried a new tactic. "I'm behind the times. My work has been poor." And out of the kindness of his heart he gave me a raise after I demanded it. I just responded, "Okay. Then." Finally, he said the words I'd been waiting 6 months to hear. "I want to call it quits." I remained professional, shook his hand with a smile, and left. On the way home, I called my family to tell them the good news. I arrived home, adjusted the dates on the unemployment forms I had filled out and waiting, and submitted them. A week later, Arthur received the letter from the state informing him that he would be shelling out my salary for the next 6 months. Panicked. He realized I had set him up. He claimed he fired me for poor work performance. But in my state, the burden of proof is on the employer. My record was spotless, and he had no documented warnings, verbal or written. His lawyer told him he was screwed. Now, many people think unemployment just comes from a general state fund. But as one online commenter pointed out, while the state agency pays you, claims like mine directly impact the company's insurance rates. Arthur wasn't writing me a check directly, but his bill went up. He was absolutely funding his own punishment. In a last-ditch effort, he lied to the state about how much I made. The state sent me paperwork asking me to prove my salary. I happily sent them copies of my pay stubs. The state representative told me that after that, things went easy. He was flagged for lying, which made the rest effortless. For my reason for termination, I wrote, Arthur, the owner, made some poor business decisions that impacted the company. He let me go as a business decision. And in his shoes, I'd have done the same and understand. The state saw an honest, down-to-earth guy on paper. Then they saw Arthur's response, predictable, angry, and full of lies. His ego couldn't take it. All that was left to do was pay me. His money went to the state, and the state sent it to me. So he couldn't play any more games. For the next 6 months, I enjoyed life to the fullest on his dime. My reward for his comment at the lunch table. When the renewal letter came, I declined it. I wasn't going to let taxpayers foot the bill. 3 weeks later, I had a new job. This story is a testament that while evil often wins, this time it didn't. This time, it cost Arthur $32,500. To be exact. A year later, I'm happy. I enjoy my new job and my new boss. I discovered myself again, the goofy, friendly guy whose light is no longer dimmed by a dark presence. The most important lesson in all of this is that money isn't everything. There is only one thing of true value, your happiness. What is the most clever, lawful revenge you've ever seen someone get on a horrible boss? Share your stories in the comments below.